A straight-talking fractional CMO, Kevin Mason, founder of Fraxis, joins us today to talk about how he works with companies to make sure that their market investments achieve their growth goals. How are you today, Kevin?
I'm very good, thanks, David. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Well, firstly, again, thank you for taking the time to join us and share your story. Fortunately, my voice is on the way out, so it's probably going to be mostly you talking today, but it'd be great if you could maybe kick us off and share with our listeners what it is that you do and what actually is a fractional CMO.
Okay, so let's start off. Fractional CMO is fractional Chief Marketing Officer, and basically what that means is that I work on a part-time basis with the boards of companies who've got growth ambitions, and they know that they need marketing to drive that growth. So they get me. I've got 30 years plus experience doing this. Look at the face. I've got all the scars to prove it. But they get me at a fraction of the cost of actually hiring a full-time, chief marketing officer to join the board. So, as I said in the intro, I'm straight talking, and I get results. Most importantly, so I'll paint you a picture of typically who I work with to give you an idea of why someone might need a fractional CMO. Typically, I'll work with companies who have been in business for a fair while, 10, 15 years. They've reached a certain size, maybe 10, 20 million turnover, and they've done that through sales, relationship, word of mouth, and the marketing has been kind of comms and sales support to make them look legit, really. Yeah. So they've got a 5-year plan. It might be just to grow for the sake of the shareholders. It might be they're planning an exit, or they're planning to raise funding. And so they know their sales have kind of hit a plateau. So they've reached a certain size. They may be needing to enter into new markets, or just build where they are. And so they know that they need marketing to drive that growth. Now, everybody on the board will have an opinion about marketing.
Yeah.
It's a given. Everybody's got an opinion about marketing. Yeah. The board will. And they'll have read some articles. So they'll say, well, we need to be doing SEO, or we need to be doing account-based marketing. So they try some of these things and they dabble with it. And especially when you're entering markets where people haven't heard of you, the last thing you can do is apologetically get up onto the stage. You've got to be bold about it, and you've got to go large to have any effect at all. Anything less is a complete waste of money, and it won't have any effect. So these things that they've dabbled with, they'll say, oh, that hasn't worked, this hasn't worked. And because there's no one on the board with any marketing experience, they can't direct. They'll have an enthusiastic team, but that team have just been doing sales support and comms, so they can't come up with the strategy of what's going to drive growth.
Because there is a difference between sort of smaller business marketing needing to be more direct and, like you say, more sales channels, isn't there?
Yes,
to
there
the
is.
Larger companies and corporations, that's more about brand marketing and stuff. Is that what you...
Well, to a point, yes. I would say I work particularly with B2B companies.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going in there and trying to drive sales through marketing, you'll have reached a point where you're coming up against some of the big boys who have brand recognition.
Right. Yeah.
And so in any given month, there's only about 5% of the buying population that are actually in market at that time. So everybody's fishing in a very small pool. So the balance is to drive short-term sales growth, but also to start building your brand so that people have heard of you when you get in the room. And that's really important, because if you haven't got that differentiation and a strong brand recognition, then you'll be in a beauty parade with a buying committee. Everybody else is saying much the same thing.
Yeah.
What do I base my decision on? Price. Whereas if you've got a single, I'll give you an example. I met a groundworks company yesterday for construction. Now, you look at most builders' websites or groundworks websites, they'll list what they do.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Everybody's saying the same thing. This guy said, the owner said, well, we're quite tidy, you know, because a lot of people are afraid of people coming into their homes or whatever. So I said, well, that's brilliant, because if you've seen 3 or 4 other companies and they just list what they do, you'll remember the tidy guys. And also you might pay just that little extra because they take that little bit more time.
Yeah.
So brand is actually really, really important and becoming increasingly so in B2B as well as consumer marketing. So it's a balance between brand building, which takes a long time, and short-term activation. And if you get the balance right, then actually the brand building affects the effectiveness of the sales marketing as well.
That makes a lot of sense. So having the expertise of somebody who's in the industry that sort of knows
Yeah,
how to
and knowing the levers to pull, knowing the channels that are relevant for that strategy, creating a strategy. So you've got your proposition and your positioning right, and then the strategy and the plan of how you're going to attack the market. So you get your message right, and then you need to make sure you've got the right coverage and the right balance between sales activation, account-based marketing, and brand building, to get you where you need. The other really critical thing is once we've got those basics right, is making the right hire, because a lot of the companies I work with, they'll have juniors who are good copywriters or designers, you know, that they know their chops, but you need mid-senior level marketing manager who can make all of that happen and then step up to the board. Typically, I'll work with a company for about a year.
Yeah.
After that year, then that marketing exec then steps up and is reporting to the board. Once we know that the marketing engine's all working and delivering what we need it to deliver.
I suppose that's taking the transition from sort of like an advertising strategy to a marketing strategy, which is that bigger umbrella of all communications sort of fit into that marketing strategy. Whereas, like you say, SEO, that's an advertising type strategy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a tactic.
Yeah, tactic. Yeah.
It's making sure that all of those tactics are adding up to what's necessary to deliver the strategy.
So what's your background then? What were you doing before you set up Fraxis?
So I got 30 years in big agencies, smaller niche agencies, client side. So I've worked with brands like Panasonic and Samsung and Ford, all the way down to startups and scale ups. And I was working more with kind of SMEs, sort of mid-market, not startups, but mid-market. So I worked with a niche insurance mutual in Cornwall, for example, that kind of business. And that's, so when I decided to set up the company, I thought I enjoyed that most. So that's where I'm going to target myself, really. That's where I can add most value. You know, corporate stuff is great and it pays the bills, but you never feel you're making much difference, and you're just a cog in the wheel, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could sort of share some advice to those growing businesses that are in that transitional period, what sort of marketing advice or words of wisdom would you give them in that growth period?
So I would say, don't dabble. Get your ducks in a row. Certainly get your ducks in a row before you approach any agencies, because I've worked in agencies. Agencies are trained to say yes. So they will say yes, whatever. But you know, if you haven't got your ducks in a row, then you can't brief an agency.
So what sort of things do you mean by putting your ducks in a row?
So what's your position in the market? What's your proposition? You know, and then what's your growth objective and your take to market strategy? Get all of that set.
Yeah.
You can brief an agency who can then work creatively with that brief. Don't expect them to come up with the brief for you, because you know. So we've talked about companies all sort of looking the same. There's a kind of, you know, if your website is saying we are a leading company in this, take a look at your competitors' websites.
Everybody says it.
9 times out of 10, they'll all say that. And why is that? Because the marketing team don't have anything else to say. They don't have they don't know what the point of difference is. The business leaders are supposed to know that. So that's the thing, you know?
Yeah, it's a really good share, actually. It's sort of like that Simon Sinek start with why, understand what it is you do and why you do it.
Yeah.
To tell the story, because people buy from people ultimately, don't they? Whether it's
They
business
do,
to business,
yeah,
business to retail, it's still a personal transaction.
it is. Yeah, absolutely. And but also, you know, marketing has a bad rap, deservedly so. In my opinion, there's an awful lot of bullshit that's talked about marketing.
Yeah.
But if you get it, the right sort of marketing should actually also be driving your company strategy. It should be, the two should be like that.
Yeah.
I'll give an example. That mutual insurance company I talked about, they had a huge competitor, nationwide competitor, who they had all sorts of consumer insurance products as well, and they were national TV advertising, so they're a massive brand. These guys were just operating in the Southwest. Both companies came from the same roots. They started in farming insurance, but the big boys have gone consumer as well. And this company the company I was working with, they were kind of a me too. So they had house insurance, car insurance, all these things. And I sat in a board meeting once where they were saying, well, should we insure, we need to grow, should we insure golf clubs? And it was just unfocused. So we doubled down on the niche.
Okay.
Now, the point about it was, in doubling down on the niche, it was about protecting the future of farming, because there were existential threats coming to farming, like Brexit and climate change and all these things. So it was more about resilience. They then started bolting on all kinds of different things to their proposition, including soil agronomy consultancy, because they had that mindset of, this is why we get out of bed in the morning. You know, we're protecting the future of farming. So it can be very, very powerful, and it really
it's a compelling vision and mission, isn't it? It's a compelling reason, purpose to, like you say, get out of bed and put the effort in.
Absolutely, and their customers loved it. You know, I remember going out and visiting farms and them saying, well, you stuck to your roots, we like that. You know, how much are these big flashy adverts costing their members, all this kind of stuff, you know. And the proof's in the pudding. I talked to the guys just a couple of weeks ago, and they had achieved, what was it, just under 30% year-on-year growth in net new written business. So, you know, it worked.
There's some real value in becoming a specialist in your field, isn't there? Absolutely. So marketing is one of those things that commonly gets cut early in terms of cost-saving exercises when things get a little bit difficult. Why do you think that is? Why is it one of the first things that generally gets cut?
Generally, it gets cut if the marketing is not a strategic driver of growth.
Okay.
And in order to be able to evidence that, you need the data to prove it. So, you know, there's lots of data studies out there looking at brands through downturns in the economy, for example. The brands that kept investing in marketing through the downturn recovered quicker, and their growth when it came out of the downturn was steeper. So they outperformed their competitors. You can only know that if you're tracking exactly what your marketing's doing. So, you know, by its nature, if you haven't got a strategic marketing plan and you're not comfortable that you absolutely know that marketing's driving growth, you'll just think it's an overhead, and you'll just cut it.
So thinking about that clear vision, being a specialist in the industry that you're in, having that proposition strategy, knowing how to go to market, and then implementing a really clear marketing strategy, they're the sort of fundamentals of...
Yeah, and then tracking it.
And measuring it. Yeah, absolutely. So you know what's working, what's not working, and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. Because I mean, it's a really crowded marketplace in whatever industry you're in these days, isn't it? So it's, you know, marketing is one of the most fundamental elements of a business to stand out from the crowd, becoming more and more important every year. Absolutely
becoming more and more important, especially in B2B, because traditionally B2B has been quarterly sales driven targets, and everybody's pretty much saying the same thing because it's all directed at sales. The move towards more differentiation, more brand clarity and proposition clarity, that they, as soon as you put your head above the parapet, everyone looks around and goes, bloody hell, that's different. And then that market starts to shift. Classic sectors are things like manufacturing. You know, the number of manufacturers, when I do like a market analysis and see how people are positioning themselves, they're all saying the same bloody thing, you know. And there's one or two or three tropes like we're innovative or our service is better or we're this or that. It's meaningless.
Words, isn't it?
Absolutely meaningless. It's just wallpaper.
Yeah.
You know.
Interesting. So what about yourself then? How long ago did you set up Fraxis? What made you make the leap from employment and corporate world to going it alone and starting a business for yourself?
Okay, well, I was doing more and more of these kind of engagements, and you can imagine I was with a B2B marketing agency in Bristol. I was strategy director there, and I was doing more and more of these things where I would go in and I was part-time marketer. I was sitting on the boards of clients, and I was part-time marketing director, and that was the bit that I loved. And your credibility is based on the objectiveness of what you're saying. So if you've got an agency full of services that they want you to sell into, there starts to become a rub. So I thought, I enjoy this stuff, but I don't think that it works particularly well bolted onto an agency. So I decided to set up my own thing. And through the years, I've got a huge network of specialists. So whatever the needs of that particular business, I'll plug in a specialist who I know can deliver on that particular specialism.
So how long ago was it you set it up?
I set it up last October.
October.
Yeah.
So relatively fresh. What have your biggest learnings been since starting?
Okay. Wish I'd done it a long time ago.
Yeah, that's a common thing, actually. That's a really common thing.
Yeah.
Take that self-sabotage out your head and do it earlier.
Yes, yeah, should have done that. Learnings. I was quite lucky. So I got my first couple of clients because I already had a network of contacts. The learnings I would say, don't underestimate how long it takes to build your reputation and get things going and get sales going. So, network. I mean, you and I, David, have met through the Open Doors network.
Yeah.
And choose your network really wisely. Because
that's that marketing strategy thing, though, isn't it? If you've got that clear idea of what it is that you want the business to be, therefore what your marketing strategy, you find the right group to suit your business rather than just find a group and seeing how it can fit.
Yes, exactly that. And also, I was pretty clear about who I was targeting, what my proposition was, and all of those things before I started. But just stay open to refining that, bouncing it off people. That's why Open Doors is so great, because you're constantly talking and kind of pitching your proposition, and people help you with that. That's a good thing, because you can never stop learning. Never stop learning.
And you know what, being in business can be pretty lonely sometimes. So having people around you to, like you say, to talk to, bounce ideas off. And
yes, exactly that. Yeah,
absolutely. So if you had the opportunity to go back to pre-October or even earlier, if you could have started earlier, would you have done anything differently? Is there any sort of thing you look back and gone, actually, I wish I'd done it that way?
In all honesty, no, not really, David. I mean, the benefit of having left it that long was that I was fairly confident that I could deliver, and that I wasn't a have-a-go hero and just sort of set something up and give it a go. I thought, no, actually, there's something in this, so I can do it. So, yeah, I don't think I would have. Perhaps maybe 2 years earlier, but no more than that. I think you need that. You need to be that long in the tooth to be able to, sit in front of a board and actually call them to order and say, you're talking nonsense, guys. Sometimes
it's when the stars align and the timing just feels right as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So what about the next 5 years then? What's your plans? Where do you want to take the business? Where do you want it to go? What's the next 5 years look like for you?
Well, I don't plan on taking people on or growing business. It's a, you know, it's a personal business for me. So 2, 3, maybe 4 clients a year is fine for me. So to keep finding them, that's the objective. Also, the clients that I've worked with, that they're still successful. I don't lose touch with them. I always sort of check in and see how it's going, even, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Yeah. So you know, I really, that matters to me that they're still doing great. 5 years time, I'll probably be retired, David. So
okay. And
yeah.
what's your retirement plans? What are you going to do? Time.
So we will probably downsize a bit. Might move to France.
Okay.
Fancy living in France. And travel. We enjoy travel a lot. So we'll probably spend half the year here and half the year abroad.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the dream.
What does your ideal client look like? What does sort of an ideal company look like that you'd work
Okay. With? So as I said, I specialize in business to business.
Yeah.
Although I have worked heavily with wealth managers, bizarre. Okay. There is a link because they're quite long sales cycles and high consideration, and but you know, apart from that, but mainly business to business, and companies that have reached 10, 20 million, yeah, who need to then grow. Yeah. So they've got the budget to do it seriously, and get it right. And so, you know, my sales channels are it's rare that you actually meet a manufacturer, or, you know, I go to places where I might, but introducers might be accountants, or financial planners who have got non-exec directors as clients. Yeah, that's a good route in. People like yourself, David, you know, management consultants who know that they've, you know, there's a plan in 2, 3 years to sell or raise equity, and who need marketing. I mean, I saw a frightening quote from a VC in San Francisco. I can't remember her name now, but she said 95% of people coming for funding fail because they don't know how they're going to spend the money, and the biggest gap in that plan is marketing.
Yeah, I can well believe that, actually.
Yeah,
I can well believe that. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite scary. And just think of some of the growth that people can achieve if they've got that strategy right, if they've got that clarity around what it is, again, their proposition is, how they're going to go to market, what makes them a bit different from their competitors.
Yeah, and then they got a plan, and they know exactly how that plan's going to work, and it's fully costed. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
And then ideally, when you come to the you know, the acquisition or the sale or the fundraising event, you've got a track record of it actually working, so they can see this is going out, this is coming in. You know,
listen, any investor of any description wants to know they're going to get a return on their investment. The best way to see that is a proven track record of marketing, sales,
yeah,
cash flow, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And it's also, if you put yourself in the seat of the investor or the acquirer, if you don't have that, they're going to beat you down on price. They might like the business, but they go, actually, you know, that needs work. We'll have to do that. Whereas if you've got it going, then you're gonna increase your pre-money valuation, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's compound interest of making more profit, but also making your company more valuable. Yeah, in terms of acquisition, sales, and things like that. So yeah, really cool. I think you're right. I think marketing is one of the biggest strategies that's often not understood properly, a bit neglected, cut early when times get hard, but it's almost one of the most important factors of business success out there.
It's fundamental. It really is fundamental. But as you know, as we said, everybody's got an opinion about it. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Listen, that's been really, really interesting, Kevin. Thank you ever so much for your time. How would our listeners reach out to you, get in contact? Where can they go to find you?
Find me on LinkedIn is the easiest. Okay. Yeah. Kevin Mason. That's it. Or look for Fraxis. Search for Fraxis. Fraxis.
Perfect. Evan, thank you ever so much for your time.
Pleasure.